Okay, hello everyone. Oh, let me back up. Okay, hello guys. Thanks for coming to this talk in this very loud room. I hope you can hear me okay. People are going to be shouting, I'm going to be shouting. If you have any questions, you can shout at me and we can do it in a bit more like interactive way. So today's talk is going to be about denial of service attacks against Ethereum. And I'm going to talk to you about a few projects we've been working on. My name is George. Yeah, I should probably do it full screen. What? Thank you, Justin. Okay, so my name is George. I work as a researcher on the Ethereum Foundation. This talk is going to be about the work we've been doing for the past 5 months. It's about protocols for defending against denial of service attacks on the Beacon chain. Maybe you think that denial of service attacks are boring, and maybe you're right, but I'll try to give you some context on why they can be fun and why protocols to defend against them can be interesting. So, all right, so Ethereum is moving to proof of stake. I think most of you know it. And when we move to proof of stake, everything is going to be beautiful. Gas fees are going to be 0. Everything is going to be perfect. But the threat of denial of service attacks still exists. And this is because, let's talk in proof of work, when you make blocks to the internet, you don't need to have a long-lasting relationship with the chain. You can just be a miner, sit on your computer, mine, push it out. Nobody needs to know anything about you. Although in proof of stake, you have a much more long-term relationship with the protocol. And this means that your identity is public, your IP is public. This makes you much more vulnerable to attacks. And the attacks we're going to talk about today is attacks on the block proposal. So the queue you see there is basically people who have lined up to become the block proposers of the Beacon chain. So, we need to produce block every 12 seconds. The way this works on the Beacon chain is that we have some sort of election process that looks a bit like this. This might be the more complicated slide I have today. It basically shows you that every epoch, every 6 minutes, we sample 32 people. We put them in a queue like this one, and they propose blocks one by one. So the identity of the proposers is public, and you know who are going to be the next 32 proposers at any given point. This is interesting because this allows an attacker to enumerate the proposers and snipe them one by one, effectively disabling the blockchain. So you're going to be why should I why would anyone disable the blockchain? Apart from Batman and Joker kind of situation where the person is insane, why would anyone else do it? And there are a couple of reasons you can, there are a couple of incentives you might have as an attacker to launch denial of service attacks against the blockchain. I'm going to give you a few. A basic one is, you're an attacker, you short Ethereum, you denial of service the blockchain, you go on Twitter, you say that Ethereum is down, you get money. One is that. The other attack is, you're a miner, you are doing MEV scanning, you see a very high value MEV block, you want it, but someone else has it, someone else is in the queue in front of you, you kill that guy, you take the MEV. That's another way you can get money out of denial of service. And there is more intricate in-protocol attacks you can do, bias the randomness beacon, you can do a bunch of stuff. So I hope I motivated you enough to see some point in defending against these attacks. And the obvious way to defend against these attacks is to hide the proposer. So, in that queue before, ideally, only the proposers themselves would know that they are there. So nobody knows who the next proposer is going to be, but the proposer himself or herself knows that they're going to be the next proposer. And when they propose, they prove that this is the case. So this is like the fundamental concept of single secret leader election protocols, because they elect a single person secretly in an on-chain verifiable way. So in this talk, I'm going to give you a bunch of approaches on how to build these protocols to hide the proposers. So specifically, I'm going to start with a work we've been working. It's not my work. I've been working on this with the rest of the Ethereum cryptography team. It's called WISC, and it's an election protocol based on shuffling. So it's based on a paper by Dan Bonnet and other people who basically introduced this idea of shuffling protocols a few years ago, I guess. And we took that protocol, we made it much more robust. We wrote the code to implement it on the Ethereum Beacon chain. We wrote the spec on how it's going to work, and we published it a few weeks ago for people to look at it. So it has lots of cryptography. I'm not going to talk about cryptography in this talk. I don't think this is it's too loud. But if you're interested, please do find WISC on ETH Research and read more about it. So the fundamental concept of WISC is this shuffling thing. The shuffling thing is a concept from the the 70s, I think, when David Chaum introduced protocols to do anonymity on the internet, and he created mixnets. Mixnets are like constructions through which your packets go through multiple hops, a bit like Tor, a bit like other anonymity systems, and each node takes the packets, puts them in a list, and shuffles them, and then after a bit releases them. So it's been happening since the 70s, this idea of shuffling. And the nice thing is that there have been cryptographic protocols to prove that the shuffling is correct. So, not someone can take the list of messages and swap out a few messages. They can cryptographically prove that they actually shuffle them correctly and randomize them. And these are protocols that people have been working for 30 years for the realm of anonymity. But this approach also uses them for the purpose of hiding proposals on the Beacon chain. So this is the main cryptographic object of the proposal. It's basically a commitment scheme. K is a random value. It's nice because if you I'm not going to go deep into this, but the idea is that if you reveal K, you can prove that you are the owner of this commitment, but also anyone can take this thing and randomize it so that other people cannot learn where it went. You don't need to understand this so much, but the idea is that everyone takes one of these commitments, like all the validators of the Beacon chain, they put them in a bucket, and then we shuffle the bucket for a day, shuffle it all the time, and then by the end of the shuffling, no one can learn which commitment of which validator is in which position, basically. And also, using the cryptography I mentioned before, you can prove that the shuffles were honest and not some malicious person swapped out legit commitments for bad commitments. So the idea is that at the end of the shuffling phase, you basically get a little roll of tickets, and each ticket represents a validator, and you can open your ticket and prove that you are that person and propose a block. So this is the super high level approach. And it works, it definitely works. We've written the code that shows how it's done. one fundamental problem is that it has lots of cryptography that is not trivial. Like this proof, the shuffling proof, is a pretty complicated object. I mean, if you're like a zero knowledge expert, it's not complicated. It's something that you learn in the beginning of your journey as a zero knowledge person, but still for anyone else, it's pretty advanced math. And so the complexity of this cryptography is the main barrier to adopting this protocol. So that was WISC. I just told you WISC. There is more approaches one can take to do this whole secret leader election thing. Polkadot has a different approach. They call it sassafras. It's a tree. The idea is that every validator makes tickets for themselves, and then they publish it anonymously. And then you sort those tickets, and the winners propose. The problem is the anonymous part relies on an anonymity network, and this severely complicates the networking of the system. So, this approach is much simpler in terms of cryptography, but much more complicated in terms of networking. So these are different trade-offs one can take to choose how to defend against denial of service attacks. And there is another approach, which is what Algorand does, which is instead of doing a single leader election, you do a multiple leader election. So at any given point, multiple people think that they're the proposers, and they publish their blogs. And then it's up to the network to decide who is the actual winner. It works, that also works, but it also complicates the networking. It also complicates the logic of choosing which block is the right one. So this is another, shit. Okay, thank you. All right, so that's another approach. So I just gave you 3 approaches on how to do this thing. We're still investigating which one is better, but for the short term, there is also Band-Aid solutions we can deploy that are not so complicated, but can still get the job done. The most basic approach is, you have each validator use a different IP for different things. When you propose a block, you use a different IP than what else you did, so that makes it harder to get denial of service. So this VPN-like approach would be the Band-Aid solution we deploy for the short term until we build these more complex protocols. So at this point, we're more on the contemplation stage. We're looking at all the protocols. We're trying to think which protocol better suits our trade-offs, trying to optimize the shuffle proofs, trying to see whether we can make do with different kind of proofs, with simpler proofs. And we're basically in an entire process of figuring out which protocol is best for us. And this sums up the talk. If you, it has been pretty high level, but still there is lots of underlying complexity that I didn't get into. And if you're interested, please feel free to send me an email or find me upstairs or any of that things. Thanks a lot. We do questions, or we don't do that here? Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to shout them. The question was, what's the decision process for Ethereum and these kind of things? So it's ad hoc. We publish this proposal. People come to us. They say this is too complex. We say you're right. Then we try to think of ways to make it less complex. We try to think of other approaches. We're still not in the stage where we put it on the roadmap. We're still before that. So we're still in the optimizing trade-offs thing. I think at some point we will have a simple enough protocol that we will get some rough consensus that this is what we're going to go for. And then how we proceed after that, it's still trying to fit it into the greater roadmap of proof of stake. Yes.
Here, maybe I'll give you this. I've got two now. Something like a consensus algorithm like Phantom Opera, where they do round robin, and each validator is selected sequentially. We don't see it get DDoS that commonly. Why doesn't that happen? And forgive me, I'm not a consensus guy.
So I'm not familiar with Phantom Opera as the idea, but the question of why doesn't proof of stake get denial of service more frequently is a question for most proof of stake protocols, since I think none of them, maybe only Algorand, is actually defending against these attacks. So I don't know, I think maybe, the incentives for the, like for Ethereum, for example, maybe there is not enough stake in the merge hasn't happened yet, so there is not enough incentives for an attacker to do it. Or maybe they're focusing on other things, or maybe it's the kind of attack that if they pull it once, then everyone is going to use VPNs or something. And I honestly, I don't know. I hope it continues to be that way until we fix it, but I don't know what. What?
If more people have questions for you, would you mind answering them also?
Yeah, of course. Okay, thanks a lot.